Hey everyone, thank you very much for joining us today and welcome to Salesforce Ben's LinkedIn Live event. Today we're going to be talking about Slack and how it can supercharge your productivity. Now this is a webinar I've been really looking forward to, mainly because I've used Slack for years, but I don't think I'm using it properly at all. And I also don't know much about Slack's potential to integrate with Salesforce. It's something that we haven't done internally as a business. So really looking forward to this session to learn from the experts. So I'm going to introduce Daniel and Matt from 21B. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey Ben, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having
us. No worries. Yeah, thanks for being here. So I'm going to hand over to Daniel and Matt now to take us through the presentation, and we will be having a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions at all throughout the session, then feel free to drop them in the comments while the event's going on, and we can pick them up at the end. So I'll hand over to you guys now, and I'll see you at the end.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Great. Can you guys see the screen? Yes. Okay, sorry. All right, thanks everyone. We'll get started then. So let's supercharge your Slack skills. So a little bit about the agenda here, like who we are. We'll introduce ourselves a little bit more. We'll talk a little bit about Slack, why, when, how should we use Slack, just to make sure we're all aligned on those points. And then really diving into how, we'll discuss basics, right? Things that new users to Slack will find really beneficial. Advanced skills, things that maybe more intermediate users will have. Probably those of you who are like Ben, who maybe just don't know what you don't know, but have been using Slack for a while. And then Salesforce and Slack skills, right? These are things that Salesforce is talking about at Dreamforce, at other World Tour, right? How to integrate the systems, how to get the most out of both of the systems at the same time, and really making Slack the front end of Salesforce. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end, like Ben mentioned. So who are we? My name is Daniel Sanchez. I'm a co-founder here. Matt is also here with me today, co-founder. We're both Slack consultants. We're both Slack community leads and certified in Slack and Salesforce. 21B is a Slack first consulting partner. So we're an official Salesforce consulting partner, but we focus really on anything Slack first, right? All things Slack. We do consulting, right? So helping companies navigate how to optimize for Slack, setting vision, roadmap, those kind of things. We do administration, right? The actual hands on the keyboard. Well, great. We've determined we want to go to enterprise grid, or we want to set up Slack this way. How do we do it? We're the ones who can help do it with your team. And then development, right? If there is the need for custom dev, we're certified in Slack dev. We know the API, so we can do that. And then just a little bit more about the kind of work we do, right? We hear a lot about migrations from either Business Plus or Pro on Slack up to Enterprise Grid, or merging, right? Companies that acquire the companies and merging those workspaces together, a lot of data migration type work, launching and relaunching to a point that was raised before, right? Maybe you've had Slack for a while at your company, but now you realize that it's not working as well as it could. Let's relaunch it. Let's figure out how to make it better and work more effectively for your team. Again, Salesforce and Slack, just generic automation. How do we automate routine processes? Workflow Builder is an amazing tool in Slack, very underutilized, I would say, across the board. So we can help you figure out how to create really cool automations. I'll talk more about that. We'll show that towards the end on advanced skills. Again, going back to something we hear from a lot of our customers is we use Slack. We didn't really have anyone who administered it or owned it. And now we're not sure what we can do best with it. We don't have a vision. We don't have a roadmap, and the team doesn't know how to use it. We can help with that. We can help adoption and enablement. So it's setting up a way to get your team enabled and really loving Slack, finding the champions internally to drive use. And then, right, just in general, we can do advisory if you need help with anything. So getting into the facts, right? This is one of my favorite slides because this really says it all about Slack, right? What do people love to say about Slack? It's a messaging platform. It's for chat. It's for synchronous communications. I want to go into this presentation with that being not true, right? It's more than a messaging platform. These facts are true because of that, right? 35% faster overall. faster case resolution, reduced meetings, meaning asynchronous communication is increased, fewer emails, 338% return on investment. That's kind of unheard of in a software that is, right, that can do so much more than just messaging. So why Slack? Efficiency. We know that it's a productivity platform that is able to automate and unite teams in one place. What happens when you're more productive? You increase the bottom line and you increase revenue, right? That could be sales cycles. So sales teams use this, right? We hear a lot about that. That could be engineering teams. It could be HR and onboarding teams, getting your new hires enabled quicker to join the team, regardless of what team they're on. Satisfaction. Everyone, in most cases, I could be wrong, but in most cases, people say, I love working on Slack. Slack is great. I enjoy using emojis. It's easy for me to understand and talk to people, partners, customers, prospects, leads. All those people can use Slack and they're always happy to use it as opposed to some other tools. And last but not least, a quote directly from Benioff himself: Slack will become the new interface for Salesforce Customer 360. So when people talk about why are we using Slack to integrate Salesforce, why should I start to invest in Slack? It's because long-term, Slack will be the front end of Salesforce. Here's just kind of a breadth of the functionality, the features, stuff that we're going to talk a little bit about here in the basics and intermediate skills. Some of the integrations that are available, some of the partner apps, just kind of set the background so everyone's on the same page here. All right, so why Slack, when is it useful? I'll go back to you on that one. When isn't it useful? I think I put a poll on LinkedIn yesterday to see how many workspaces people are in, because I was curious. Most said 1 to 5. Second to that was 11 plus, because there's so many opportunities to use Slack. Ohana Slack is a great one. If you're not in there, I would highly suggest it. This is a link. Great for support, a great Slack workspace to start to use Slack from a community perspective. We've also worked with nonprofits, financial services companies. We've heard of sports teams using Slack. I mean, it's kind of across the board, people who are using Slack and when it's useful. Another one, right, a big one is that if you have a digital team of any kind, you're not in the office all the time, no matter what, you need a digital HQ, right? You can take the physical HQ away from a team if they have a digital HQ and a company can still function. If you take Slack away from teams, it becomes very difficult for them to function in any cohesive way. And this is a quote from the old CEO Butterfield at Frontiers last year. Let's go back to productivity. If you're looking to increase your productivity, it makes it faster and easier to work synchronously or asynchronously. Not to mention that Slack GPT is coming here sometime in the future. So they just continue to optimize how it's useful. And then, of course, I'll let you see the previous slide on why it's a no-brainer with Salesforce. So let's get into the actual content of this presentation, the actual reason why everyone is joining. How can I increase my skills? How can I learn more about the basic skills, the advanced skills, the Salesforce and Slack skills? So it's good to start with the core features, what I'm calling Slack core, right? This is the top level for anyone who's brand new to Slack. This is what's a workspace, what are channels, how do I use reminders, new stuff like what is Canvas? How do I use Canvas for my teams? For maybe intermediate people, what's a good way for me to search using keyboard shortcuts so I don't have to go to my mouse all the time? Start to do a little bit quicker use of searching through Slack. How do I use Slack Connect to work with partners or prospects or leads or people outside of my company? How do I get away from email and just use Slack Connect? Those are really important things, and that's a great way to get started directly within core Slack itself. Once you understand the core, next step is, okay, great. How do I integrate it with Jira, right? How do I integrate it with Salesforce? How do I do integrations that keep me in Slack, make my team work more effectively, and don't require any development? These are admin integrations. So these are things that can be done by point and click. Great, right? Okay. So you know core features, you know how to do point and click, but maybe your team has a specific platform, something on the back end that has an API and you want to create a custom bot, great. Slack provides extensive APIs and 2 different frameworks. They have a legacy framework and a new framework that just came out to quickly spin up brand new bots. So there's a great developer community around Slack. So you can build custom things as well if you wanted to. And last but not least, this is an important one for this audience specifically, and I think Salesforce implementers or Salesforce administrators in general, is some products take a long time to go live. There's month-long release cycles. It could take 6 months for you to see any value after buying a product, right? Slack's different. What we've seen is when you start using Slack, you learn more about it. And as you learn more about it, you grow with it, right? So Slack grows with your team. Maybe you have a certain process that works this way today. 3 months from now, it works this way, and it's been optimized because you started using it 3 months ago. You don't wait 6 months to start using it just to find out it doesn't work exactly right for your team. So I think iterating is how you really get good at Slack. And just on the Salesforce and Slack side, right? Salesforce is constantly putting out new integrations, upgrades to their current set of suite of tools. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. Just a quick visual here, right? The Slack value curve, if you're not familiar, this is really how Slack helps customers and users kind of get up the Slack value curve into what they call transformational, changing the way you run your business, right? What you see is a lot of companies, users, admins are still kind of inorganic. And it's not because they aren't smart or they don't understand what the value is. It's maybe just because they haven't been trained on what a good way to use the tool effectively, right? So we see that organic really means you use DMs, maybe you use channels. In some cases, we work with customers who only use DMs. So getting them to use channels moves them into purposeful. Once they start using channels, they start to think about automation and workflows, integrations. That gets them to aligned. Then they start thinking, how can this actually change my business? And it gets them to transformational. So this is all part of growing your skills from basic through to kind of integrated with Salesforce. Perfect. So I think we're still on time here. So let's cover some basic Slack skills here. We'll let me share my whole screen. Can you guys see Slack?
We can indeed.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. So from this point forward, it's going to be back and forth between the deck and Slack. But I wanted to just quickly review a few things here on the basics, right? So let's go back to this persona is someone who's brand new to Salesforce, to Slack. Maybe they just got added into a workspace. Maybe they don't even know what that is. And so here's some things that you could do to get started and really get your basic skills. Workspaces, channels, threads, DMs. We'll review that here in a demo workspace in a second. Your sidebar is critical to making Slack work for you. If you haven't taken time to set up your sidebar the way you want to, definitely one of the highest things you can do to make it less noisy, less distracting for you, right? Those are things we hear. Same thing for notifications. Take a look at those. Look at your do not disturb schedule. Make sure that you really know how your sidebar notifications are set up because you want Slack to work for you. And then going into some ways of async or synchronous communication, I'll show you how clips work. That's a great way to do asynchronous communication. If you're familiar with tools like Loom, it's like Loom inside of Slack. Synchronous communication, right? Instead of jumping on a Zoom, quickly spin up a huddle, talk to your team in a few minutes. This is a great one for what they call pizza teams or water cooler conversations. You bump into someone and you can just quickly talk to them. It's very low pressure. It's just like being in the office back in the day, or if you're still in the office. And let's not forget about profile, your status, and emojis. These are things that are kind of very basic, but I do want to cover quickly. So going back into Slack here. So for a person who is new, right, what are we looking at here? On this left-hand side, you'll see all the workspaces that I'm in. These are communities, different customers we work with, and then our own internal workspaces plus test workspaces. So each one of these icons is a workspace. Once you get into your workspace, you have your sidebar here and you have your channels, right? So all these are channels that I have been added to. in this sales team workspace. I just realized I skipped this slide. So the scenario here, going back, is you're joining a sales team, you're brand new, you want to start using the basics, get them set up to work for you. So you joined, right? You have channels, and one of those things I mentioned before was creating sections. It's really simple. But you can say, right, let me create this as my priority leads. Put a emoji on it, create this, and then, right, you could say, well, I know these deals are critical to me. Let me drop those into priority. And so now you've started to organize your sidebar in a way that makes sense for you. Maybe you don't need to look at all the deals. Maybe you only need to look at these. On top of that, right, you have quick access to your preferences. So in the top left, some of you who've used Slack might notice you have more options here. You can hide this kind of stuff using your preferences. So, right, in preferences and sidebar, you could click, well, I want direct messages to show, and anytime someone uses an emoji or app mentions me, and you know what, canvases are important to me too. Let me add that there. You can also change your notifications, right, based on the sidebar sections, and you have a few more options here, something to keep in mind. I would highly suggest that anyone on this call looking for basics reviews their preferences after this call as soon as you guys have time, because it is helpful to go through this, kind of just make Slack work for you. Let's see. And then a few more things here. We'll do clips, huddles, and the final three. So one thing that I'm joining this as a sales rep. I'm in the team sales channel. There's a team daily stand-up here. And it looks like Jack Johnson here has gone ahead and posted a clip for us to watch asynchronously, which provides a new help request action. So these clips are a great way, using this button right here, to be able to record your screen and walk through stuff, or record a different tab and walk through stuff. And you'll see Matt's in here responding right now to me. So this provides a way to do kind of asynchronous collaboration, provide updates, or even ahead of a call, be able to put data in here. So if we needed to, we could say, want to hop on a quick huddle. And then, right, say asynchronous wasn't working, we could just start a huddle in the thread, and it would invite the people here in this channel to this huddle, where we could discuss, right, the daily update, if there's additional things this team needs to be working on. That's a little bit about clips and huddles. Last thing, but not the least, but something that definitely is valuable, right? Go to your profile in the top right. Again, you have access to preferences here, which takes you to the same modal. But if you go to profile, definitely upload a profile picture. Make sure your initial information is up to date. This is what other people see of you when you're conversing with them on Slack. Highly recommend always putting a profile, always putting your name. If there are additional information or data points here, depending on what workspace or community or organization, right, you might have additional fields here that you want to add. This is people's way to find you and understand who you are in a company or workspace. So definitely suggest that. Same thing for status here. I see very few people using the status in the top right. So something that is also good to use and should be something that is in your daily, let me update my status with my unavailability if I'm out, or if I'm working on something or I'm heads down, it's good to have that. Just for cognizant of time, I'm going to keep going. All right. So more advanced ways to use Slack. We went through really basic stuff there, probably stuff a lot of people know already, but now let's get into some advanced stuff. Let's talk Canvas. Let's talk Workflow Builder, Later, and Reminders. These are all really powerful things. Keyboard shortcuts, Scheduled Send, and Slack Connect. So the first thing I want to show you, right, is two different workflows. We have the Sales Team Daily Update. So this is something that I've seen across all sorts of teams use this. You can do a weekly, daily, it's a scheduled thing. just ask the team in the channel to provide an update. They can come into the thread, they can drop clips, they can sync on huddles. Very quick for, right? It's a routine thing that you no longer need a meeting for. That's a quick win on a workflow side. If you wanted something that wasn't scheduled, you wanted something that you just wanted, right? If they need help, if a sales team member needs help with something, you have the opportunity to create workflows. In this case, I created a simple need help workflow, pops a modal that allows you to enter a few fields, right? Let's say this isn't really urgent. Need help with XYZ op. And we'll say I'm really needing help from Matt on this one. If I submit this, right, the way it's set up is it posts to the team sales channel. This could post somewhere else, of course, but the goal of this is to automate that request, standardize that request, and be able, like Matt just said, to be able to click a button to basically assign it to himself and say, hey, I can help with this. Before, this might have been a meeting. I need to set up a call. I need to set up a 30-minute block on your calendar. Now it's done, right? Matt just messaged me while we're talking to say he's got time to huddle up and basically get the help needed, right? Done. This is a great example of how to use kind of the workflow piece of it. On the Canvas and later side, right? Maybe when Matt responds, you don't have time to do this. So there's a great feature called later. If I click this, you can basically build a to-do list of things that you want to do later. Again, going back to synchronous versus asynchronous productivity and collaboration. Now, if I go into, my computer doesn't freeze on me. If I go into later, here, I can see anything I've saved, right? You have the option to complete it, or I can set a reminder. So this is kind of manual right now, but say I know I'm freeing up in about 3 hours. Let me just set a reminder for myself to check on this then. Now this will pop up to me in 3 hours to basically remind me. So you can build a list internal to Slack of things that messages you've read, but maybe you couldn't reply to immediately, things you want to follow up on, go do later. Later and reminders are a great way to do that. A few other points here, and then I'm gonna keep moving because I'm running out of time. There's a lot to cover. Canvas, right? This is a big one, and people are talking about how can I use Canvas? What's a good way to use Canvas? So I'll show you an example in this channel. Again, back to the team sales channel. You have this little icon up here. That is your canvas. This is a canvas specifically for this channel. And what it would be showing if it opened is basically a way for the team of this channel to get information quickly for the channel. So it, of course, demo gods. So it provides a way, right? Previously, maybe you had documentation for your sales team that was in Confluence or, I don't know, Google Docs or some internal knowledge base. You could pop it straight into this canvas. Think of it, for people who have used Notion, think of Canvas as like a elementary-ish basic version of Notion within Slack. So you can build basically Notion-esque pages in Slack. This is a demo org, so that's probably why it's causing an issue. And that is Canvas. I'm going to skip over the rest for now, just to make sure there's enough time for the Salesforce and Slack stuff. So what is the Salesforce and Slack, right? What this would be, someone has told you you're the admin of a team and they want you to help them do administration for their sales process. So maybe you have Salesforce and you have Slack. They're two separate systems. You're not sure where you should start. What tool should you use? All those questions, right? How do you use it, and how do I even set it up, right? So there's a few things. This is the really interesting stuff. There's platform for Slack. So for those who are familiar, this is really the stuff that's on the flow side in Salesforce. These are flow actions that you can use to basically anything that happens in Salesforce, any data you have, you can trigger stuff to send to Slack and do certain actions. There are more focused cloud-specific apps, Sales Cloud for Slack and Service Cloud for Slack. I'll show the Sales Cloud for Slack app and how it works in a second here. You also have the option to go right third party if you wanted to. So Troops was one of the first ones that's being integrated into Sales Cloud for Slack. There's still Rattle and Centro out here that provide similar functionality to some of these apps, mostly probably closest related to Platform for Slack or Service Cloud for Slack. And then there's brand new, this is what I posted on LinkedIn, brand new Workflow Builder, Salesforce steps and triggers coming, which I'll show as well. And then just additional links for sharing this deck out after. So first, what is Platform for Slack? Basically in Salesforce, if you look up Slack in your setup, you'll see all these different options. What you need to do is go to initial Slack setup. You'll agree to some terms and conditions, and then essentially you just turn on certain apps here. So this will expose, you don't have to turn on the Platform for Slack one. Once you agree to the terms and conditions and this point up here, you'll see those flow actions in your workspace, in your Salesforce org. If you wanted to install additional apps, that's where you would need this third step. So definitely take a look at this. This would be the step one on your Salesforce side to get it set up. But then what you would then do on the Slack side is actually install the apps for sales. In this case, sales, you see services in here, Salesforce for Slack. So there's a few different flavors and options you have here. And this will come into play when you create either flow actions in Salesforce or when you use the app here in Slack. So going back to our Team Slack example, there's this thing as part of Sales Cloud for Slack called the sales menu. This is really like home base for the app. When you use that / command or shortcut command now, I guess they're called, you get the option to do certain things. And so this is where you can start to see the integrated power of Slack and Salesforce. So you can create a record. That's what I did up here for this one. So if I want to view this record I just created previously, you have the option to view certain fields. You can then directly edit straight from Slack, right? So this provides a way to, well, let's say we talk to Frank and we're moving him to working. Save that. All right, so Sales Cloud for Slack is now allowing the sales team to quickly update leads, create leads directly in this team sales channel without ever leaving Slack. Additional, because it's a lot to go through, there's Centro, right? And this is just another example of how to kind of do the same thing we just did with it in a different format. This allows you to create custom forms where you can basically add whatever fields you want, essentially your required fields, and create records quickly. So this is creating a brand new lead using Centro, just posted it to Salesforce, and then we should get a notification back from Centro that this lead's been created. So just a few different ways you can do things here. I'm just trying to show, just to kind of get the wheels moving as far as how you would want to use it. That's Sales Cloud for Slack, that's Centro. And then what I want to show is kind of the brand new stuff, right? So this is, for those who might not have seen it before, this is Workflow Builder. Looks a little different than the live Workflow Builder because we're in a pilot for this. But what you're seeing is kind of two new things for those who are familiar. There are now steps here, which didn't exist before, where you can basically do certain actions. So you can build Slack workflows that do things in Salesforce. So here's a list of the fields. Secondarily, you can trigger off Salesforce events. So if I edit this trigger, what is this saying? This is saying that anytime a lead is created in our production Salesforce org, to basically grab that. And then what this flow actually does is once that lead's created, it creates a new channel, it adds a channel topic, and then it posts that channel, that lead information into that new channel. And so that's the brand new stuff that's coming sometime in the future, safe harbor, sometime in the future. Very powerful stuff, but it is very similar to what exists in Centro and what exists in the Sales Cloud for Slack or Platform for Slack app. And with that said, I think I'm at time. Time for Q&A. Freeze. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, I don't mean to rush you. We can go over a bit if you want to, but if that's all, then.
I think that it's a lot of fire hose stuff, so I'm happy to take questions or answer more.
Yeah, nice. I might need to rewatch this because I learned so much new stuff. Like it's just small things like the later tab. I see that every single day, but I just don't know what it does, but I do now. But I'm definitely going to need to rewatch this session. So thank you very much for that. Great. So I see a few questions in the chat so far, but if you've got any more for Daniel and Matt, then feel free to drop them in. Let me just go through them now. I'll just put this up, this comment, because it's quite a nice compliment. Can't see who that's from, unfortunately. So there's a question here about from anonymous user about they'd be interested to know how Slack is with accessibility and what you've done in other projects. There was a great link that someone posted there, but yeah, how about you guys?
Yeah, nothing specific. I would say that out of the box they do have accessibility requirements met. I would refer back to Slack documentation on that one, but I would say there is nothing extra that has to be done to meet some kind of default accessibility requirement that I would have to look at Slack documentation to see what that actual like certification is.
Nice, thank you.
Yep.
And here's a really good one. How do you not get overwhelmed with Slack, especially with the amount of Slack workspaces we tend to end up being a part of? Is there a more productive way to check? And I'm sure you're an expert at this because I saw how many workspaces you had on your Slack.
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what I was saying at the beginning of making Slack work for you. People can prescribe, right? The whole reason why sidebars are specific to users and not able to, maybe that's a general thing to start with. Sidebars can only be set by users. So that means that by default, sidebars should be set up by you to make them work for you. So in those sections, within those, right, in a workspace, in a section, you can change the notification preferences down to that level. If you don't want to get that specific, you can change it at the workspace level. So for example, for me, for communities I'm in, I probably have all notifications off except for references to certain words like Slack consulting, stuff like that. And then I probably have @ mentions on, right? So only if someone @ mentions me or says Slack, am I interested in what's going on in that community to get notified about. I can obviously go in at any time and look at all the new messages if I have time, but that's the notifications I need. So I think going back into those workspaces, looking at your notification preferences is step one. Step two would be within the workspaces, making sure your sidebar sections, assuming it's a paid workspace, are set up in the way that you think works best for you. And this takes a couple minutes. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but it's probably taking more to talk about than to actually do. Those are my two biggest tips.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Dan's come up with a great idea. Maybe we can work on this together, guys. Publishing a list of recommended Slack apps. I don't think I've seen that anywhere. Yeah, great idea. We were actually speaking about this just before we kicked off the live event, so this is quite relevant. How valuable would it be to obtain a Slack certification as junior Salesforce consultant, or perhaps expanding that for any Salesforce professional?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be critical for anyone who is a Salesforce administrator to at least understand how Slack and Salesforce could work together, and that would mean a Slack admin certification could be really beneficial just to really understand what the admin side of Slack looks like. I understand a lot of Salesforce admins probably are Slack end users, but not so much Slack admins. So admin is definitely a good idea for just understanding basics, kind of stuff we covered today. But on the admin side, for those of you if there is anyone on this call who works at bigger companies, global companies, on enterprise grid, large user bases, the Slack consultant exam would probably be beneficial because that one walks through the enterprise grid policies and settings, securities, a lot of really detailed stuff that you might not need if you're at a smaller company or smaller users. So that's my thought. Really wouldn't need the Slack development certification unless you're planning on building full custom custom bots or apps.
Yeah, great. And I mean, we talk a lot about niches and specializations on the site to further your career. And I think maybe people have the misconceptions. You said at the start that Slack is pretty basic. It's just for messaging. But hopefully, what you can see from this session is that there's a lot you can do with it. It has so much potential. We don't usually get into specific troubleshooting questions on webinars, but just quickly, this one from Dustin. He doesn't see the later feature in his Slack workspace. Is this something that needs to be enabled?
That's a great question. Some of you also might not see Canvas. To be honest, we don't see Canvas in our production workspace yet. The best thing to do is to either refresh, or if you go up into Slack in the top bar, you'll see help. Sorry, I'm in Chrome. If you go up, you'll see troubleshooting or help, troubleshooting, clear cache and exit. If you go do that, then you should be able to basically refresh your Slack. If it's not there after that, Slack has a phased rollout to new features. They do that to make sure that there's no issues. Instead of kind of to my slide earlier, they don't do big bang releases. They do phased approaches. So it might just not be available in your workspace yet.
Cool. Thank you very much. Turn it off and on again. That's always a
that was the short version. Thanks, bud.
Here's a good question from Stuart. When installing and configuring Slack on Salesforce, does this impact the usage Salesforce limits whenever a Slack notification is triggered?
To my knowledge, and what we've been told is it does not affect API requests. It basically is separate from if you had another app and you were making API requests out of Salesforce, that would count, but Salesforce and Slack apps don't count, is what we've been told. But I would confirm that with your AE or Salesforce contact before putting 100,000 calls back and forth.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. But I think that's pretty consistent with other apps and using connectors from other Salesforce apps. So yeah, makes sense. We've got a bit of time, so if anyone else has got any questions, feel free to send them through now. We've got one from Anna here. Do you know the best resources to study for the Slack admin or consultant certification? Yeah,
absolutely. I would say 100% the prep courses are great. I know there are additional costs. There are probably some voucher codes floating around somewhere for those, but the prep courses are great. The second thing is just the Slack help website. So slack.com/help, I believe. .com/help. This is I'm just still sharing my screen, right, Ben?
No, you're not.
Oh, well, there you go. That would be helpful. Sorry, guys. If I can share my screen. Definitely bookmark this page. I mean, there's one of the things that we find is we don't have to do much of our own content creation for training or help guides, because Slack does a great job at providing all that. So, right, if you're new and you're just learning Slack, getting started is a great place to go. About the Slack certification side, right, tutorials is a great thing. You click this and you have all sorts of interesting things you can do in here, down to specific use cases to, to your point, Ben, like how do I set a reminder to submit my expenses? There's a bunch of valuable stuff in here. So clicking around here is a good, one of my favorite resources.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks, Daniel. Good one here from Romarik. How do you manage Teams tasks with Slack?
Yeah, that's great. So what we do internally is we use ClickUp for project management. So we integrate with ClickUp. So we have one channel that's directly with the customer. That's a externally facing customer channel, project channel. And then we have an internal channel. On that internal channel, we link that to ClickUp. And so we have ClickUp integrated with Slack, and it provides updates based on movement of the ticket, or right, you can configure that. I would say that's probably, ClickUp, but that's probably a short-term thing, because Slack seems to be going in the direction of allowing task management with what I showed earlier on the later, right? That seems like a really basic version of a task management tool. So if they keep going that route, I would assume at some point you can have full task management directly in Slack.
Cool. Yeah, that would be very, very helpful. And then you kind of touched on this earlier, but Dan's asked any recommendations for managing many workspaces in addition to setting preferences or save for later?
No, I think that's a great question, Dan. I mean, I think about that all the time from a separate perspective as far as like how to roll up potentially to like a org level, some way in Slack to roll all those save for laters up, maybe to a way that you can see them together with all the workspaces you're in. I think these are things that hasn't really come on Slack's radar. So I would say feedback@slack.com is a great way to raise these kind of ideas and questions. Slack has been super receptive to feedback. We're in pilots with them. We do beta tests with them. There's stuff that we've told them that they fixed that's now in the product. So I would say that if you have ideas like that or you want their thoughts about how that might be possible, definitely reach out to them. But I don't think there's a good way to do it right now. To answer your, not a great answer, but I don't think there's a great way to do it right now.
I suppose most people, well, I guess from some of the comments, people are subscribed to quite a lot of Workspaces. I know I am, but I suppose, yeah, I don't know whether it's a common, issue that Slack users are having, but from the looks of things, it is. Yep. We've got one here that's come over from YouTube, so I can't bring it up, but sorry, let me just get rid of that other one. It says, in regards to the workflow items you demoed, is there a reason to not use the flow functionality for Slack that Salesforce implemented?
It's on the Salesforce side. Can you say that one more time?
Is in regards to the workflow items you demoed, is there a reason to not use the flow functionality for Slack that Salesforce implemented?
Is there a reason to not use the Salesforce flow actions that Salesforce implemented to integrate Salesforce and Slack?
I think so, yeah.
I don't think there is. It would depend on your use case, right? So what we've seen is they're still under development. I would say that's the best way to say it. There's features. The reason why a third-party app exists is because there is feature differences between what exists out of the box and what a third-party app can provide. So I would say that that's very specific to your use case. What kind of notifications are you trying to send? How powerful are you trying to make the automation? Like the Sales Cloud for Slack app might be good for sending a notification to the general channel that you've won an opportunity. If you wanted to automate a whole process end to end, you might find it difficult to do using a Sales Cloud for Slack app. That would be my, again, it would be dependent on what they're trying to do.
Cool. I'll just put it up again because I don't know if that was the same URL you're on earlier, Daniel, but yeah, slackcertified.com has got a bunch of resources to get certified.
That's a good point. The badges on there are great.
Oh yeah, nice. Just had a question from Kishav. Is this webinar available later? Yes, this will live on our YouTube channel later, which I'm sure someone could put the link in the chat so you can rewatch it. I think we have covered off most of the questions. I don't know if you can see any in the comments there, guys, that you'd like to answer, but I think we've done most of them. There is one that's just come in from Hanan, actually. Is Slack working on the capabilities to make and receive phone calls? That'd be pretty cool.
That would be cool. It's something we've heard requested. We've set up SMS from Slack using a third-party tool called Clerk. Is being able to basically SMS from channels. As far as making and receiving phone calls, we're not aware to date of any feature plans like that, but Slack's always working on stuff. So I would assume if, again, feedback@slack.com is a great way to ask them directly or request it.
Cool. Great. There is one. Sorry, Sahash, I've just seen your message about your question. Is there any inbuilt analytics on channel usage or KPIs that they can use for creating a business case for a Slack implementation?
Yep, that's a great question. So there are analytics that exist, and right? Depending on your plan, you get access to different types of analytics. On the Pro or Business Plus plan, you can basically see how many active members you have, where the channels, where messages are sent and read. So you can get visibility into things like, okay, how many people are actually on Slack, how many messages are sent in DMs versus private channels versus public channels. And what we've used that in our implementations to say, well, we got, it was 95% of messages were sent in DMs. Now we're at 70% are sent in DMs and 20% are sent in channels. That's valuable because then you have all that staved up information, right? That visibility into that data in channels now instead of DMs. So there's really high level analytics that exist for the Pro and Business Plus plan. On the Enterprise Grid plan, there's a lot more reporting capabilities and are doing a lot to enhance the capabilities there. So I would say on the larger deals, much more analytics are available.
Cool. Great. Thank you very much. All right. I think we're going to wrap up there then. Someone has just put in the chat, we'll be having an advanced overview of Slack in the future. So maybe that's something we can work on. But yeah, I'd just like to say thank you very much for everyone for attending. This has been a really insightful session. I've learned a lot myself from this that I'm definitely going to take back to our Slack channel and our business to implement. So Daniel, Matt, thank you very much. I would drop your website in the chat again, just in case anyone wants to check out what you guys do. But apart from that, any last words?
Just always available on Slack Connect. If you know how to Slack Connect, Matt and I are happy to chat on there, or email us, or message us on the website. Happy to talk more about this anytime.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks a lot for having us.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks, Ben. Bye.